want to act as though they're in the room. Like, and I think that goes for anyone. You know, if someone's talking smack about you or talking smack about a friend of yours in front of you, act like that friend was in the room. What would they want for you to do? Don't be a two-faced son of a bitch. Don't be a whiny, sniveling play-along. You believe in someone, someone's friendship means something to you, you say something about it. You go, hey, that person's my friend, and it's really not cool to be talking that way around me. That's not all right. This attitude that people have now where they're protected by A, a keyboard, B, in some cases, total anonymity and distance from the person that they're offending, has led to this weird emboldening of us to be complete and utter flaming D-bags. And it's something that exists pretty much exclusively because of the internet. And it was all right. It was all right up to a point, because this is what would happen. And people would get emboldened. They know that they were never going to meet the other person in person. So knowing that they wouldn't have to look them in the eye face to face and stare them down and say the horrible, terrible, awful things they were saying on the interwebs, they felt free to comment with impunity. Not necessarily believing everything they said, not necessarily taking everything seriously. But, you know, the slinging of mud that is a Twitter war or a war in the comments section of YouTube or Facebook or whatever the hell it is. Like, it, oh God, it raised the wussiest generation of people. I come from a pre-internet era. Like, the internet was a thing when I was a kid, but only in its very sort of early stages of inception. So I come from an era where if you are going to make a turd sandwich, you got to be willing to take a bite. If you're going to talk all sorts of smack to someone, you got to risk getting a beat down. You got to imagine that there's consequences, that there's a potential fist fight lurking around every misplaced word. You're careful not to say things that can be viewed as being out of line because you might get your ass handed to you.
How dare you say something like that? I'm going to beat your asterisk.
Exactly. I come from an era where that wasn't how you solved disputes. You solved disputes face to face. And it sounds like I'm from the Wild West. No, I'm from the 90s. A simpler time. But that said, I think we've kind of come full circle where people from the 90s got online and they started talking smack on the interwebs. But there was always that thought in the back of your mind that you might be called upon to deal with this with your fists at some point. So you started acting differently in person than you did online. And that's cool. But now we have a generation of adults that's used to screaming and yelling atrocities and obscenities on the internet, not necessarily realizing what the consequences of their words are. And they take that emboldened stance. They take that false sense of security that the interwebs gives them. They get all hot and bothered. They get ready to kick some ass. And they go out into the world. And you know what? They're acting the same in the street as they are online. And that's where it's all starting to fall down. That's where we're running into some very real problems. Because, oh man, I said it on the internet, therefore it must be true. That means when I go out in the street, I have to beat this guy's asterisk. And it's not a good and it's not a healthy situation. And I think it comes from the fact that we have an entire generation of adults now that has never had the consequence of being forced to look someone in the eye and tell them what they think. No, they get to do it from the relative safety of being behind a keyboard, hiding behind an internet connection. Yet they're taking that emboldened attitude out into the street. And that, my friend, has a lot to do with why racial divides are bigger than they've ever been in my adult lifetime. That, my friend, has a lot to do with why people are more divided politically, why people are rioting in the streets. They take this stupid attitude that they get from growing up on message boards and they walk out into the street and think that applies in real life, and it does not. Put your phone down, interact with people, become a civilization again. Please, God. If you are making wrapping paper for Hanukkah presents, this is pretty much the worst call you could possibly make. A woman named Cheryl Shapiro was shopping for wrapping paper A woman named Cheryl Shapiro was shopping for wrapping paper at Walgreens in Northridge, California, and noticed something odd on the design of the Hanukkah wrapping paper. Bearing in mind, this is Hanukkah wrapping paper, the big Jewish holiday. What did she notice? Awkwardness ensued. What she noticed was the fact that on this Hanukkah wrapping paper, there were swastikas. Yeah, swastikas. Symbol of Nazism. Well, no, okay. To be fair, a swastika is a Hindu symbol that was reappropriated by the Nazis. What it meant was peace and enlightenment back in the day. In fact, Himmler, failed chicken farmer that became head of the SS, pretty much besides Hitler, the guy with the most blood on his hands in terms of the entire Holocaust. He was a big believer in the fact that, and this is how out there he was a big believer in the fact that, well, not the fact, in the idea that the Germans, the Aryan race, were superior because they were descended from the people of Atlantis. And he cooked up this harebrained scheme that the people of Atlantis, after Atlantis was lost forever, went to Tibet. And because they were surrounded by the Himalayas and not able to have their gene pool polluted by people coming in from the outside because of Tibet being the remote civilization that it was, he believed that the Tibetans were somehow linked to the people of Atlantis. And he wanted to go find some sort of genetic link to the Aryan race and Tibet, meaning that this would signify the fact that the Germans, the Aryans, were in fact the master race because they were somehow descended from the people of Atlantis who had wound up in Tibet. Pretty out there, I think you'd agree. And when German scientists got to Tibet, and people were like, that was pretty out there, they're like, oh no, wait, we both use this symbol, the swastika. And they're like, oh, it's a symbol of enlightenment. And they're like, yeah, that's what it is. But obviously, to the Nazis, it wasn't. Now, based on the photos online, I don't think the swastikas on the wrapping paper are there on purpose. They're part of a geometric pattern. So I'm going to give the manufacturer the benefit of the doubt and say it's an accident. But even accidentally, swastikas don't really belong on any wrapping paper, let alone wrapping paper for the Jews. Walgreens announced yesterday they're going to be pulling the wrapping paper off their shelves immediately.
Sometimes you feel like it's cool to turn the other cheek and give people the benefit of the doubt even when they don't deserve it. And sometimes you feel good.